rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. I know. Everybody's at Wilson. And no students. All right, so we'll start with recognition. Administrative Assistant Day.
So tomorrow, maybe in your place of business, you're aware of this as well. Tomorrow is Administrative Assistant Day. If you did not know that, you may want to go shopping on the way home tonight.
Stop the shops open.
Yeah. We have a wonderful recognition here at Central Office where we all get together and we recognize the small army that supports all the work that happens in the district. We have a great breakfast. Gail is the florist. She does a wonderful job preparing the flowers. As a side gig, doesn't work out as assistant superintendent. Yeah. She always has something to call out.
They're always out. I want to see your garden.
They're not here, but I want the board to know because board members do interact, administrators interact, teachers interact with the folks up here. Human resources, technology, you name it. When you call, they answer the phone, and they do an amazing job here. I feel very fortunate to work with this team up here, and we will recognize them tomorrow. And each building will recognize their team as well.
And on behalf of the board, we recognize, but not only the school personnel, administrative assistants in the schools that we all get to talk to from time to time, but also Wendy and Laura, shout out, for helping us keep our day jobs and helping us with some of that. So thank you.
Yes, indeed.
Moving on to public participation. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak? Student representative report.
Yeah, not here.
Again, busy time of year. Superintendent's report.
Yeah, so reconfiguration update. I wanted to update the board. I've given a lot of updates on kind of movement, on programming, on staffing. We're going to focus on kids and parents tonight. So that's coming up. If you remember when we put together our long-term chart of the events, historically, so back in the fall and the winter, we had some events that cross schools because we're going to be rebranding schools. We have Ryerson and Jeffrey with some combinations of students. Back in the fall, we had a combined event, magician event at Polson. We had a mini golf night. I was hosted by the district-wide elementary PTO back in March. But we have principal visits coming up. So Mrs. Frost will be visiting Jeffrey School on the 24th. Mrs. Spooner will be visiting Jeffrey School as well. And Mrs. Frost is going, and she'll be meeting the students who are currently there that she'll be the new principal for next year. Mrs. Spooner will visit with just those students transitioning from Jeffrey to Ryerson, so they get to meet the new principal. Mr. Henderson will be doing a road show and meeting with the students that will be going to Brown as fourth graders. So meeting with the current third graders and the current fourth graders. We have some evening meetings for parents coming up as well. On the 25th, we have Jeffrey School and Ryerson School. Those are for parents. Brown will have two separate meetings, one for current third grade and one for current fourth grade parents. And then students will be doing some visits to their new schools. This was all mapped out a year ago by the administrative team. The elementary principals in Gale did a great job doing this. We have TCLC visiting Jeffrey and Ryerson. And then we've broken down the students for different grade levels. For Island Avenue, K1, 2 will visit Jeffrey. Grade 3 will go to Brown. Grade 4 will go to Brown. Same thing for Jeffrey School. K1 and 2 will visit Ryerson, those students that will be going there next year. And then grade 3 and grade 4 will go separately to visit Brown. Ryerson, grade 3 and grade 4 will go to Brown. This is all on the website. Everything is up there, all the transitions. And finally, the best part, the ice cream socials will be June 11th at Jeffrey and Ryerson. And then Brown will host an early one for grade 3 on June 6th and a later one in the evening at 6 o'clock for grade 4. And then all the parents will wait until August for the placement letters for their individual teachers, and then back to school orientations as well. We have a slew of activities, informational, social, cultural, and I think it's going to be like everything else we've done so far. The team has been amazing with this transition. So complete confidence that we'll continue with that. Any questions on the reconfiguration? All those plans are?
On family bowling night this week too.
That's this week, that's right, thank you. Yes.
Busy week. When? Friday.
Friday night.
For Jeffrey Myers.
Yeah.
I'm not going. Family bowling.
You don't bowl?
Oh, East Haven.
Yeah.
And there are some board members that will be going to some of these
Yes.
meetings that I let Tom know about, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Funds for teachers. This is one of the coolest updates I'm going to be providing. Really. We have a couple of our elite teaching staff at the high school, Mia Corbino and Melissa Bader here. And they put together just an amazing proposal. I'm going to do my best to highlight this, but we wanted them to come here. Can you move your seats to right there? Is that okay? Thank you. I want you to join the table. 'Cause I have a feeling there's going to be a ton of exciting, interesting questions here. So a little background, Fund for Teachers. Fund for Teachers is something that's fairly new to me. I was unfamiliar with it. I know that Gail went to a recent meeting and there was a representative from Connecticut, former principal, who I actually know from years ago, who's the Connecticut rep for Fund for Teachers. Fund for Teachers supports educators nationally, internationally. Since 2001, invested more than $32 million in 8,500 teachers. They offer grants to transform growth for teachers and their students. They have a very simple mission. They want to strengthen instruction by investing in outstanding teachers and self-determined professional growth. Voila, there you are. And the vision, I love the vision. Transform instruction, become a national core of empowered and validated educators sought after in their communities and nationally as leaders, innovators, and change makers. Quite a charge you have.
Yeah.
So they want to make learning relevant, meaningful, inspire professional growth, collaborate. Just a wonderful, wonderful vision. And I don't know, was it a couple months ago that you submitted the
January 31st, it was due.
It was due.
We submitted
That's when it
on
went in.
January
Okay.
31st.
And your initial meeting was in October?
It was in October, yeah.
Yeah.
So the proposal is about 9 pages long.
We printed it.
Yes, I did print it.
For us, if you
good.
can we,
Oh, you
do
did?
want,
Okay.
yes,
So-
we do
Before
want.
you hand it out,
Yeah, go ahead,
before you
finish
hand it
up.
out, yeah. It's a very, very simple concept that you can drill down to the details here.
Yeah.
Our World Lit program is being revamped, and that's part of the genesis of this. But I think I would be doing a real disservice if I didn't pause and talk a little about Melissa and Mia. So we have done a great deal of work up at the high school in the English department, and Melissa's led a lot of that work as a program coordinator, and Mia has done a great deal of that work. Mia has transformed. I'm going to TC for the 3-day training, and she's just a voracious learner. And I walk by Mia's room, and she's come in and come see. And you go in, and she invites. The doors open, and there's nothing more inspiring as a fellow educator than to see somebody that is always wanting to get what's my next level. What's my next level? Mia is that personified. Melissa, the same thing, and for them to go after this the way they did, it's remarkable. So the World Lit course we're looking to reinvent, and the brief description is they want to take a look at Cuba's history and culture in conjunction with the art of rhetoric and propaganda to inform student learning around the current political fabric of Cuba and the United States. That's a one-sentence kind of overview here, but there's
I've
9.
not created course yet.
Nine.
Doesn't exist yet?
We have the, go ahead.
Yeah, we can
The
speak
current.
to all of it.
Well, we do not have the course yet. We are, like Tom says, we're gonna revamp the World Lit curriculum. It has been a sophomore course for many, many years, and we're shifting it to the junior level, and we're reconfiguring the trimesters around literature from around the world, and Cuba, our trip to Cuba will hopefully feed a lot of what we bring to the students for that. And you can go.
I think, listen, one thing though, I think I started reading,
Yeah.
and I instantly knew the TED Talk that you referred to.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
Google the TED Talk, well, you'll get a copy of this, The Danger of the Single Story.
Yeah, we're gonna.
And when you think of the world
Yeah.
today and the danger of the single story, I started reading it. This grant opportunity comes at a perfect time. Our district is restructuring the World Lit curriculum into a series of electives and so forth. the TED Talk entitled The Danger of the Single Story, a truth that is crucial to the development of our elective curriculum, insisting that single story creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is not that they're untrue, is that they're incomplete. They make one story become the only story. And in essence, the goal of our globally focused
Right.
approach is to expand the incomplete single stories to provide as many second stories as possible.
Right.
So you had me at hello. I read that and I was like, oh my God, this
Yeah.
is exactly where in 2019, in a rather homogeneous community, which you acknowledge many times, in your proposal,
Yeah.
what an opportunity for our kids. So I'm done, and you guys, there'll be questions, but talk a little bit about kind of the background and what you're
Sure.
hoping to accomplish. It's awesome stuff.
So to kind of elaborate on what Mia had said, we created, and you'll see it in here, we created kind of an imagined course, what a course could look like around this. We felt that it was best to be very specific for the sake of the application, so we did that. But we did try to think of how this kind of skeleton of a course could work, insert any culture. And so I think what we hope to bring to the table is very simply some perspective. And I think that our kids don't know what they don't know, and we don't know what we don't know. And so the best we can do is educate ourselves, and to go to a country that is oppressed, and with whom we are at odds, I felt like could really bring some perspective to the process of the writing of the curriculum. So hopefully we get to use stuff that we bring back. But
Yeah, and in a really cool way, we get to practice what we want our students to do. We're going to be going into this country that is just so, we have no idea, really. My husband was there back in '92 with a rowing event, and he came back just couldn't say, and he went with his father and his brother, and they came back and talked about it. They couldn't stop talking about Cuba, and for various reasons. But it's always, been an interest of something I've always dreamed of doing, and having taught this world literature course for so many years, it's just perfect for practicing what I preach, and that's.
And teaching the kids not to be afraid.
Yeah.
And we mentioned propaganda a few times here, but I think what we wanted to highlight was that there's propaganda there, and of course we'll study that. And we learned that we were going to have a hard time talking to people about that because no one was going to want to talk to us because they would be scared to talk to us.
Which we recognize.
That's right, and that was kind of eye-opening to me to realize that too. I thought we were going to go down there and be able to just say, hey, tell us, what you think about. Yeah, and that's not going to happen. And so, but the other side of that is sort of what we're taught, about this people and this country. And I think that's a two-way street. And so I'm looking forward to kind of understanding firsthand sort of the scope of what propaganda means, in terms of our experience. So,
and how it's used.
Yeah.
And how it's used here. So part of the trip is Miami, going to Little Havana, just immersing ourselves in the Cuban immigrants in Miami first, and trying to get a sense of the. I don't know how we're gonna exactly.
Well, they'll talk to
we
us,
don't
I
know.
think.
We don't know.
Yeah.
The people who have left Cuba are really excited to tell you why they left Cuba in general. The people who are in Cuba, it's just going to be a really cool contrast to that. We're going to have to, I think, we may not hear it all, but I think we're both pretty intuitive, and we'll be able to see beneath the surface in a lot of cases. And we're also really excited about the art and music and culture that is there, because it's like a melded. Cuba is melded between the historic Spanish and the Caribbean, African influence. They're all, it's just, it's an amazing arts culture too. So we're really excited to see that, and just, go ahead.
One of the things that Dr. Williams, who was here a few weeks ago, talked about was approaching literature with this sort of threefold approach. It was economic, social, and political, and having to understand what's going on economically, socially, and politically.
ESP.
Yes, that was we're acronyms for everything, but that was our acronym, and so I'm looking forward to, we can teach the kids that, but I'm looking forward to actually living that, and then being able to come back and say, well, I don't know what I'll be able to say, but to help the kids,
I know.
something cool, I hope, but to help the kids really understand, help the kids form the right questions. I think that's the part that I'm most excited about, is I don't know what questions to ask right now. I don't know what questions I'll have when I come back, and I don't know how this will impact my teaching, but I think that for the kids to see that we did this thing because we wanted to understand more about the world, that in and of itself is just good role modeling. So.
And not necessarily a comfortable
Right.
experience for
Right.
us. I mean, Melissa and I, we've been here and there, but nothing like this. So, we've been doing our research. We had a few other plans that we were trying to put together before we got to this.
Yeah.
But for, after I taught humanities this year for the first time with Laura Stott, a history teacher, and the students were just so receptive to the discussions about propaganda, and they really were coming back and saying, wow, this is really valuable for us. So that's going to be, I think, really valuable for the students to just look at everything that's handed to them with a more critical lens, so that they can, see through what they're being sold sometimes, and that they did say in the humanities class that was extremely valuable for them, so I thought that'd be really cool.
The relevance, you
could go on and on. You could go on and on.
Yeah.
So, I haven't read the application yet, so the answer might be
Can
in
we give
here.
it to you?
Sure.
Yes.
So for your convenience,
So
because
do
it was
you
9
build
pages.
your itinerary, or
So,
does
yep, you'll
it's
actually
on for
see that
teacher?
in here.
Wow.
We, I created just a one-page summary on the front, just
How
in case
exciting.
you
You
didn't
get to be your
want
own
to
artist.
read the whole thing.
Thank you.
We were working on this to the
You're such
last
a teacher.
possible second that
Yeah,
it
we
was due.
really-
So if
really
you
good.
see an error, please.
Is this grant funded, you said? The
Yes.
entire thing?
Yes.
And then were you going to, and I know I can read this, but it's.
No,
fast-
ask.
faster.
Oh, sure.
Were you gonna propose a field trip for the students in addition to, is that what it is?
I wish.
That's a pretty,
That was not on the agenda.
okay, that's good to hear.
No.
My sister did go to Canada, but she's also a Canadian resident, and,
Oh, yeah.
it's dangerous.
To go to
Canada?
Cuba.
Or Cuba.
If
She said
you're-
she went to Canada.
I'm sorry, she's from Canada.
Canada's not
Yeah.
that big.
Oh, she
Yeah.
went to Cuba, yes.
Canada.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
she did go, my sister is American Canadian.
Yes.
She went to
Gotcha.
Cuba, and it is dangerous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're definitely have been doing our research, and we're creating contacts, and we're not bringing the students there.
Okay, I just. and
They
you're
can do
bring
that on
Cuba
their
to
own.
them.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Okay, but you are beautiful ladies, and I just.
Oh,
I
thank
mean,
you.
it's,
Aw.
So just, I. just
Don't worry,
found
we'll be
that out.
we will be careful. Yes. What else? What
You had-
other questions did you have? You can see the itinerary. You can see the budget. You can see everything here. We really tried. We had to estimate everything and go to the last page. The benefits to the school community, that paragraph I think is really, we've covered that already, but that's really important.
So there are a lot of cultures that touch on some of the propaganda and
Yeah.
other issues that you guys discussed. Why Cuba? How did you choose Cuba?
I think part of it was a bit of a comfort level. Argentina was on our radar for a minute.
And money.
Yeah.
And it was proximity.
Yeah, I
closer.
think we are not cheaper. I mean, I'm not a world traveler, are you?
I'm better than you, but not really.
So when I thought 10-hour flights to Argentina, I'm like, oh my god, I can't do that. So part of it is part of it is comfort. I wanted to be able to go somewhere. I have young kids too, so I wanted to be able to go somewhere that I would be able to get home in a reasonable amount of time and not have to fly around the world. But we started big and romantic. So part of it is that, and we realized that, it's like 100 miles away from Florida. How can it be that this place has so much to offer, and we have been influenced in so many ways for so many years by Cuban culture, and we can't go there. So that was sort of the novelty of being able to go there, as long as we are educators, was like, how can we not take that opportunity and take advantage of that? So for me, I think we're getting a lot of culture for not having to go very far. And I think that's pretty valuable too, to say to the kids that like, this is right next door. And that's part of what I'm excited about. I've been to Miami, but I didn't pay attention to that part. So having that sort of contrasting experience, like Mia said, and sort of seeing seeing a Cuban American who is free and seeing a Cuban who is not free, I think is going to be a very eye-opening experience for us.
And I've been, we both are, but I'm like in the middle of Waiting for Snow in Havana right now, which is the book that was at years back.
Yeah.
I was not in I was out of the district for like 3 years, and during those 3 years there was like a one book, one town initiative that was Waiting for Snow in Havana. Carlos Ayer, I'm not sure how to say, he's at Yale University, and I emailed him and asked him if he would meet with me and talk about his experience, and he did respond and said he would, and I thought we were going to meet over April break, but I'm sure he was in England, he came back, and I'm sure he was too busy, but I'm going to probably try to bug him again if anybody has any. You're nodding, can you help me?
No, I have a slight connection, but he's definitely worth it. He's an eminent scholar.
Yeah, I would love, and just reading though, his experience as a boy in Havana before they were airlifted. I think he was part of the airlift. I just,
You can't use your Yale connection to help you out there?
no, I can't. I
Oh.
could.
She did.
I could. No, I didn't mention it yet. I didn't. I didn't even mention it. I just. I didn't even say anything. All I did was use my Madison connection because he loves Madison, because we used his book, and he was like, oh yeah, and Cindy Schneider was like, oh, we love him, and I dropped her name, so anyway, but there is
her name, but that is.
But there is one other thing, is like when you said why Cuba, that Cuba has like had in the past. I think it's gone down a bit, but they've had almost 100% literacy in Cuba. So that's very interesting for English teachers.
So I want to jump into, because I have a Cuban friend who he helped us with this whole thing too. And he said, you're going to see a lot of those statistics, and you're going to see that the healthcare,
the healthcare supposedly.
the infrastructure is so wonderful, but he said it's not true.
Yeah.
So so I didn't expect to hear that at all. So I don't know what to, I don't know what. I'm very curious to go down there and sort of see, and I don't know that we'll be able to see classes in session or schools in session, but to see what an educational institution looks like, and to see what a hospital looks like, and really sort of gauge what that experience is, because we were told by Michael Moore in that film Sicko, that Cuba had, and he went to Cuba, and he and that in and of itself is propaganda, and that he did this whole film about our healthcare system and how terrible it is, and Cuba has a better health system than we do. How can that be? So and my friend said that's
not necessarily true.
Yeah, and he said especially over the last several years, especially since things have loosened in Cuba, and they've made millions and millions and millions of dollars each year on tourism. But he doesn't understand where the money's going, because his family's still there and they have nothing. So we did a lot of research, and I feel like we have a lot of research left to do. The other piece I wanted to add about why Cuba too is that.
Wait, before you go past there, the other reason for Cuba for me was because when I was at TC, I had a professor named Ernest Morel, and he did sociocultural foundations of literacy, And one of the texts was the literacy initiative in Cuba, and basically how at that time, as we said, we think it's probably not as good as it was, but at that time, how they basically, like, remember that commercial with the hair shampoo, and she's like, and you tell 2 friends, and you tell 2 friends, and you tell 2 friends, and like that's kind of how it like spread. And this whole document was part of our study of literacy. So that's another sort of just background piece. Go ahead, back to you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It just that the conversation about immigration, never ceases, and while our conversation is generally surrounding immigration from Mexico, this is something we don't talk about as much, but still, understanding the life and the hardships of the immigrant is something that we can absolutely bring back to the table, and that's something that we hope to get more from, I think, while we're in Florida. So that I wanted to just add that, because I think
Both
that piece
sides.
of it is not a Cuban, that's not specific to Cuba, but that's something that we hope to get some perspective on.
Any questions? All right, now.
And I just want, will you come back after
Oh,
your
yeah.
trip and
Maybe.
and
Yes.
We have to write.
No, I mean after you have to come back.
We'll do a
Kids are
slideshow.
counting on you.
We'll do a slideshow.
I think one of the things that I'm really interested
And
in.
we have to write.
And we'll tweet.
And you have to write.
We have to write a report.
They do.
Yeah.
That's part of the grant.
Dr. Williams talked a lot in that session on that day about the impact of and the importance of considering time when reading literature.
Mm-hmm.
And in a place such as Cuba where time has been
Frozen.
I'm really interested to see what role that plays in literature through his theory about time.
Well, it's also interesting because one of their biggest events every year is the book festival. They have a book festival. So we
We
can't
might
do
be.
that because it's in February,
Oh, yeah.
but I'm really interested. What are your bestsellers?
Right.
What are people reading? I want to bring home some
Love
books.
to see that. That's
I'm
really
really excited about.
But first of all, how long are you going to be there?
About 8 days.
Definitely not.
Yeah. I mean,
Not even, probably 6
budgeted for between 6 and 8 days, yeah.
Okay.
With Miami and Cuba.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that might be interesting from a literature perspective is whether there's been a modern movement or shift or any kind of change responding to kind of the post-Soviet era in
Yeah.
Cuba, because Cuba was held up as a Western Soviet-style communist state, and then that all crumbled, and it was essentially left on its own. And I wonder if that experience has translated into art
Yeah.
or literature in
Oh,
any way.
right. So there's, one of the things we're, I think, most excited about is
Yeah.
the street art,
And not just the street art
Yeah.
in the tourist area,
Yeah.
but like outside the area. So we're not just going to be in Havana, we're going to be traveling. You can see my itinerary.
Would it be useful to, it's like comparative literature, take a look at the writings of some of the Eastern European dissidents like Milan Kundera and Václav Havel, who had to write under coded circumstances?
Oh,
You know,
sure.
because they had to circumnavigate the propaganda that was in place, or maybe do a quick comparison with another Latin American writer.
Like,
You're right.
Gorgeous.
you're talking about unbearable lightness of being, like,
That kind of laughter, Book of Laughter Forgetting, those kind of, in other words, they had to think really hard about how to produce literature under repressive
Yeah.
conditions.
Right.
Which is-
And how to read that, and what was coded, for.
totally, which is something that we're spending some time on already, especially in Latin South American texts, where the writers are definitely having to hide what they're really trying to say beneath like magical realism and all
Right,
kinds of
right,
other like
right.
techniques that they use to like get these secret messages out there.
Right.
It's like a secret code. So yeah, thank you.
Just a quick one. Would you imagine you'll have an opportunity to talk with some teachers in other disciplines, maybe also teaching seniors?
Oh, that's something we didn't mention. Yeah, absolutely. Here.
Because they might want to pick up these juniors who are going to be clamoring for
Yeah.
additional experience after.
I'm taking notes, I'm not
Yeah.
texting.
So here in Madison, you mean? Yes,
Yeah.
so I'm hoping to be able to collaborate with art and social studies and to even bring them into the, and we talked about this before, bringing them into the curriculum writing process to help us frame our experiences. And I think this is going to, I think it's gonna help us create a really immersive and dynamic experience just in the curriculum writing process. I mean, whether we use Cuba or not, but I think it's gonna give us sort of the sense of how do we approach other cultures and how do we do it? You know, how do we give them a voice that, you know, maybe we can't necessarily?
How do we do it well and better than, as in the TED Talk,
Yeah.
just the single story with the generalizations that, but yeah, I mean, and I'm teaching with Laura again next year, that's humanities, so naturally that will happen, the social studies.
Yeah.
We are always making connections, but yeah, we want them involved, we want everybody to communicate the art department too.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of it as, you know, we're going as educators, not as English teachers, because I think we're looking for the whole
Yeah.
scope of what can we bring back and who can we give it to?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, totally.
So that was, I think, you know, what really captured me was that it wasn't about Cuba.
Yeah.
The long-term part of this was how do you approach cultures? How do you approach
Yeah.
discussions? How do you approach something beyond a single story?
Yeah, and
Which
if you-
is going to serve our kids very well.
Yeah, and if you look at the part that is the curricular overview
Mhm.
and the units, you can really see that those units can be applied in other areas. They're not just for Cuba, but Cuba is a really good fit for a place to start. Really,
The curriculum
really.
committee can expect some upcoming work.
It's gonna be good.
That's so
Okay.
exciting.
Thanks for letting us talk about it.
Oh
Thank
my
you.
gosh,
Thank
talk
you.
again, we wanna
Thanks,
get you
guys.
all
Appreciate
excited
it.
too. Travel
Yeah.
safe.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Good job.
Okay, other matters.
Let's do, so I was on vacation last week, so you did not get a little board cheat sheet memo from me, I apologize. No, they did not have to stay. And I did not have the wherewithal last week when I was away to put together some updates. So I'm going to take advantage of everybody being in the room and give you some updates. Here we go. Today, we have Fox 61 at Daniel Hand for National Take Back Day. I don't know if you've heard about National Take Back Day. It is a National Prescription Drug Take Back Day. According to 2017 National Survey on Drug Use, 6 million Americans misuse controlled prescription drugs. Too often, those unused prescription drugs find their way into the wrong hands. And the DEA actually sponsors National Take Back Day. Students across the country have produced PSAs, public service announcements. Some of our kids got involved in that as well. In October, National Take Back Day, which was done, this is nationally, there were 457 tons of prescriptions that were drugs that were taken back and were given to the authorities to dispose of them as they should. So, but Fox 61 was there today, did a great job covering it, so it should be on. If I get the clip, I'll forward that out to the board.
Thank you.
Another update, the board members who were here for the budget, not this recent one, last year, may remember our capital budget, we included an AV system in our Daniel Hand cafetorium. Well, the sound is unbelievable. I want to download Spotify and play my playlist. It's unbelievable. Yeah, very, very impressed. The technology behind it is remarkable. It has tablets that are native to the system, so you have multiple inputs. And as opposed to pressing buttons, you literally take the tablet and just drag and drop, and you can go from sound on the left side of the stage to the center of the stage to the back to the audience to wherever. Great investment. It's a wonderful asset to that school for some incredibly talented artisans that will take full advantage of it. Very exciting. So very good investment on the part of the board. I wanted to let the board know about that. Back in September, we had a couple of pretty hot days, if you recall, and our elementary classrooms, we don't have air conditioning there. We have to come up with a plan, our heat plan that we do at Polson in the elementary schools, and we would shuffle students to different learning stations so they can cool off throughout the day. So going to 2 schools next year, 2 elementary schools, We wanted to take full advantage, if we could, of maximizing some cooling stations in the elementary schools. Jeffrey has a pretty decent number of spaces. Ryerson did not. So Ryerson had like 1 or 2 legitimate cooling spaces. We have some special needs kids who have severe needs to be in air-conditioned, cool spaces with air quality. So Bill McMinn was able to eke out 5 classrooms where he was able to put window units in. That puts us at capacity electrically. We can't go beyond that. But certainly we have additional cooling spaces at Ryerson now, with the anticipation of May and June possibly having some warmer days. So we can take advantage of those spaces and kids can shuffle in and out throughout the day. So I want the board to know that. I do have a handout for the from Art Sickle. Every year, since I've been here, we have had 1-year renewals for our school lunch program. For board members who have been around for a while, you know that we went off of the national school lunch program. We're seeing some real nice financial numbers trending in a good direction, I should say. You know, we know through the budget process that we have to subsidize it, but it's definitely trending in the right direction with less kids. So we're doing pretty well. But Art wanted me to hand this out because we will need board action in the upcoming board meeting. So I'm going to give a hard copy and I'll follow up with any board members that may have questions. Violet? She's left?
Yeah,
Okay.
she-
She left or no? Okay. So I'll follow up with an email too. Then you can read this. Just for background, Art will come back to the next board meeting and talk further with the board. So.
Great.
Okay. And the last thing, it's going to sound kind of trite, and I don't want to sound trite, but I feel very fortunate to be surrounded with a very, very strong administrative team and a central office and across the district. And I got a wonderful email over the vacation that was one of those things where I was like, yeah, pump fist kind of email. It was recognition of a pretty cool award for one of our administrators. The Connecticut Reading Association does an award called the Nicholas Criscolo Outstanding Reading Administrator Award. And the award is pretty cool because Nicholas Criscolo Reading Award for Administrators recognizes an individual who is currently serving as an administrator and demonstrates a sincere commitment to reading and language arts education through leadership efforts. The nomination process takes place, and Gail is this year's recipient of the Connecticut Reading Association. I saw that email and the invite to go, and unfortunately, not for Gail, for me, we have the event at the country school on May 2nd, so I will not be able to go. So I wanted to make sure that I congratulated Gail publicly, because this is an incredible, this is a peer, I find that the standard in most professions is peer related. When your peers recognize you, it's a big deal. And this is a peer award. It's a wonderful award from the Connecticut Reading Association for your leadership and literacy. Thank you.
Way to go.
Can you read something for us?
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
So May 2nd, Gail will be recognized there at the state event.
We expect pictures.
Yeah. A crown.
A crown would be lovely.
Yes, yes. My granddaughter said she hopes I get a blender.
Oh.
Yeah. She's in
Practical.
kindergarten.
You give me a blender. It's like a trophy.
It's like smoothie.
Some trophies look like.
Yeah.
I got some blenders.
Yeah, there you go.
This is more like it.
I left mine in Aruba. So thank you for letting me take advantage of this time. So I didn't send another email update. I will have some other ones coming via email, but those were the key things I wanted to get out. And that's all.
Very good. Board member comments.
I have a question I didn't ask of for the Cuban project. Are they
Yeah.
Spanish speakers?
Are they?
Yes.
I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
So do they have a translator going along with that?
Well,
Full
there's a
immersion.
lot of great apps
Yeah,
that
so
you
they'll
can
just
use.
wing it.
Yeah, we'll
Got it.
have to use some wonderful apps. And of course, we have a lot of Spanish-speaking teachers at the
Give
school.
them
So
some thinkers.
I'm sure they'll receive some good tutoring.
Okay, so we'll have someone, they didn't put that in their budget.
You can't just wander around. Thank you.
Sounds great.
Not allowed.
Committee reports, curriculum and student development.
I was not around, last time. So I can't give
We
a report.
reported at the
We
last
already
meeting.
Thank you, all right.
Yes.
That makes sense. All
So
right.
nothing since, okay. Communications,
No report.
facilities.
There was no facilities meeting between the last report and now, so no report.
Finance,
Finance Committee met tonight. Stacy took us through a preliminary description of where we stand with the budget year to date, highlighted some areas where we will probably be in the red, and by the next Finance Committee meeting, that we'll have a more detailed analysis of the extent to which we'll be in red in a couple of areas, special ed, because of new families moving into the district to take advantage of it, and also some legal issues because of the length of the contract process. But we'll also have an aggregation of the other areas where we'll have funds in order to offset those deficits. And then we talked about providing some top-down guidance during the early part of the budget season next year, so that we don't run into issues like we did this year, where we're trying to do revisions 2 weeks before the budget is due. In a report.
thank you. Personnel,
Personnel committee has nothing to report. We're still talking about the bill.
policy committee.
Still recovering from that one.
Policy Committee met tonight. I want to remind you that you are looking at, in your agenda, second readings of the classroom observation policy and the policy review process policy. And once again, if you haven't had a chance to look at the policy review process policy, please do so before you see the third reading. That will alter how we process all of our policies. So speak now or forever hold your peace. We had a robust agenda tonight. We are moving forward a number of things to the board unanimously for consideration. One of those is 6090.1, home visits by social workers. You can expect to see that in the next board packet. Additionally, similarly to how the Personnel Committee causes extra work for the Finance Committee causes extra work for the Policy Committee. We have 4 policies reflected in that way. Number 3090, financial records and reports. 3110, paying for goods and services, which we're recommending that we remove from our policies. A change to policy 3140, line item transfers, and a change to policy 9540.9, voting method. All of these collectively would adjust to some extent how we react to or have to address particular financial records, and additionally how the administration has to process or wait to process certain things. So you'll get to read all that as well in the next packet, and we look forward to your feedback on that topic. We also had some good discussions. So we discussed a potential policy on out-of-district tuition-paying students and agreed that the administration will bring a draft to the next policy meeting. So the next policy meeting, if you're interested in the conversation about out-of-district tuition-paying students and those folks who are coming in potentially to pay for their kids to be here in our schools, please come to the policy meeting as we have that discussion. We saw, I should mention here too, that we saw quite a few policies from other districts and from CABE and from Shipman and Goodwin on these topics, and most districts in our DIRG and a few that we saw at DIRG A do have policies on the topic. So just so you have a sense of that as well. We also had a discussion about the policy concept paper that Seth presented regarding threats against the school community. And the committee agreed that the administration will ask Shipman and Goodwin to provide feedback after scanning the policy regarding current district policies as it compares to the concept paper, and we will be reviewing that again in the near future. And then finally, we briefly discussed the anonymous reporting app with updates from the administration. End of report.
Can I just add to that at some point?
Anything?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the naming item for Brown, we will need to rename Brown. And we expect that to go to policy probably in the near future.
Yeah.
We've already proposed and agreed that it will be the DeSantis Klaskin McNerney School. That was a unanimous agreement. So anyway, you can look for that in the near future.
Stein School didn't make the cut.
Can I ask a question about that really quick, about
Please.
classroom observations?
Yeah.
I'm just curious to know a little bit more about what prompted, is this a brand new policy or a
It's a new-
change? And does this happen often? Like how, tell me more about why we're doing this now.
I think I'll turn it over to the administration, but this is a policy that we do not have on the books in this form.
Yeah, so it actually came from Dr. Battaglia.
Observation.
Yeah, yeah. She had shared, I think she came to a policy committee meeting, that's
Yeah.
correct, yeah. It was recommended by our special education attorney,
Okay.
because as a part of some of those processes, there were some requests, and she felt that it would serve the district well to have a broad policy for everybody included in there.
Yep.
So we've been kind of following the guidelines that are in the policy until it's adopted, just so we set a standard. Doesn't happen a lot, no, absolutely
Okay.
not. It's not something that happens a lot. As a matter of fact, we were rather averse to it because of privacy issues.
Sure, yeah.
But there are some legal parameters that do permit it, so we couldn't shut it down and say it can't happen.
Right.
I thought FERPA was softened, which is the Federal Privacy Act, right before Race to the Top. And I think it permitted some of this that maybe wouldn't have existed before. But it did come from the special education director and the attorney.
And who wrote it?
Actually, she did, the attorney.
She did?
Yeah.
And so the changes that were added were from the committee?
That was after the
discussion?
committee's work.
We've seen
yeah.
it a few times, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you. Good question. Anybody else?
Learn liaison, it's happy, but they have not, their meeting is upcoming, so she'll probably have a report the next. Tri-Board Working Group for Board of Education Facilities.
The Tri-Board continues to work with Colliers to develop feasibility assessment for the options that we presented to the full Tri-Board in terms of cost and also site feasibility. Can Brown become a K-5 school, for example? What is the feasibility of having an elementary school on the Green Hill campus? Our goal is to have sufficient data to host a public forum on the 16th of May to get some feedback from the public. We are also going to move ahead with Great Blue to do a poll of the Madison community to get feedback from the community with respect to the various options once their feasibility has been determined. And then we will put together a timeline so that we can work with Seth and the facilities committee, and then based on the facilities committee recommendations, come to the full board, and then get to the CIP process prior to the fall. End of report.
Audience response. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
And then, discussion?
Yes.
Thank you.
I would like to call out a generous donation in the amount of $5,000 from the Jeffrey School PTO to the Jeffrey School. These donations are always greatly appreciated and very generous.
Yes, thank you.
Nice.
I need a motion to approve the minutes from the April 9th.
Wait,
Oh, so sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
the-
Second.
Lady. Who's, discussion?
I have to abstain.
You have to abstain. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Sorry. Motion passes. Future agenda items. Meetings and dates of importance are attached. I need a motion to adjourn at 8:28.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thanks, everybody. That was